Hey guys, so we're joined today by Chris Capre, a Buddhist trader with over 15 years' experience in the trenches trading price action as his mainstay. Now, Chris's rocky road to consistency is not atypical of most great traders who've stayed in the game for the long haul. Having turned a $3,000 account into $83,000 in under 6 months, he then went through the stomach churning ordeal of losing $50,000 in a single month. However, what separates Chris from the 90% of traders who simply give up and walk away is dogged determination to become consistently consistent. Yet, since having achieved this, he has remained humble, lives far below his means, and remains far removed from the high rolling lifestyles often touted in trader porn, which you often see on Instagram. Thankfully. Chris, welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. And we've checked out your website, a fantastic job you're doing. You seem absolutely prolific in the industry and one of the few operators or vendors who really seem to know what you're talking about. But what is interesting is you actually started off studying neuroscience and Eastern philosophy. How did you get into trading? I mean, that is not a easy or obvious pathway.
Yeah, there's very few people who go into those kind of studies in school and end up in trading. So the time that I graduated neuroscience was, 99, and at that time neuroscience was still kind of in an early infancy stage in technology and development. And so the only opportunities back then was kind of working in a lab, slicing, portions of rat brains and things like that and doing tests, and nothing too exciting that, they have with the technology today. And so after, kind of taking some time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do post, graduate studies, that um, I got into teaching yoga, and partially as a way to kind of change my life. And in that process, I was working with some private clients in a wealthy community in San Diego called Coronado. It's like a island off of San Diego, basically, and just a very abundant community. And one of my private clients was a doctor who had retired. He had invented some radiology technology for and sold it to Kodak for millions, and retired in his 40s. And he became a private client of mine, and he was dying from cancer. And he just wanted to make his body, feel good while he was going through that process, however long it would take him. And through that process, we became really good friends with his family and him, and and everybody. And one day at his house, he comes up to me with a book in his hands, and he said, I was reading this book and I had a very strange intuition about it, that you need to read this book, that you should do this. And it was a book. It was mostly a story about someone who had just graduated college and got a job in Japan trading currencies for a very kind of, strange character, very wealthy, strange character out of Japan. And, I read the book, and it got me really interested in currency trading, and I was already kind of trading some stocks and mutual funds and things like that, but nothing on any sophisticated level. And, in that process of reading the book, I just kind of lit up from the book, and it really kind of sparked my interest. And so, this is 2000, 2001. So back in the day, you're talking maybe less than 10 websites on the planet were about FX trading, because retail was still new.
Yeah.
So I had to go to my local Borders and get magazines like Stocks and Commodities magazines to learn about Forex trading, read the occasional article on it. And then they had a free demo account for GFT, which is no longer with us, but as a brokerage. But they were one of the better brokerages at that time. And so I opened up a demo account, and the moment I turned on the platform, like, my eyes just lit up, and I felt like I really understood what was going on, even though I'd never worked with an FX platform before. Like, I felt like, okay, I understand this. I don't know what it is, but I understand this.
Well, you've had
And
40,000 hours in the saddle trading, and that's far beyond the 10,000 hours that is generally mooted as being the optimal time to be good at anything. And I'm sure you've
yeah.
made had any lessons along the way. What would you say the most valuable lessons you had starting out through discovery, if you like?
In terms of starting out, I discovered very early on how important it is to be fearless, or to be able to manage one's emotions, because if somebody can be fearless, then the emotions that are going to help them will still be available, and the ones that are going to harm a trader the most are going to, be mitigated and managed. In terms of spending all this time, in front of the charts, the thing that I've learned the most is that there is no endpoint in the ability to discover more subtle and more subtle patterns in the price action. This is a skill that there's no end to the depth of this well. You can always take it deeper. You can always get 1% better at this. And I feel like I'm constantly in a process of discovery while kind of, I have a solid base in terms of understanding price action. And I feel like I'm a really good technical trader. I feel like there's no level to the skill that I can take this limit. I feel like I'm still discovering new patterns on more subtle levels. And that just continues to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So, yeah, that would probably be one of the biggest things, is that to build a really high proficiency skill level takes time. There's nobody who becomes a great martial artist inside of a year, and there's nobody who becomes a great piano player inside of a year. And if you want to become a really good trader, it's going to take time, but with the right mindset, with deliberate practice and a deep sense of focus, you can really develop a high level skill in this.
Well, I hope people are listening to this, because there is a propensity for individuals who are attracted to trading generally expect their returns to come magically after a very little investment of time and money, which is kind of counterintuitive, really, when you describe the process you've gone through. But people do and can think that way. And no doubt, throughout your 40,000 hours in the saddle, you've been tempted to walk away. Has that ever happened to you when you've come close just to giving up? And if that's the case, how have you overcome those emotions?
Yeah, there was two times that I feel like I was somewhat close to giving up. When I first started trading live, I started trading live after using demo for a month, and I started with $3,000, and I went on this insane win streak where I literally turned 83,000 or 3,000 into 83,000 in 6 months. And
Nice.
part of that was from, really leveraging my positions very aggressively, not really understanding risk management. I was trading standard lots with a $3,000 account. So if my first three trades were losses, I could have been wiped out very easily. But
Yes.
I ended up having some very big wins right off the bat. And so all of a sudden my account was much larger than what I started with very quickly. And that gave me kind of this buffer and cushion to start attacking the market aggressively. But then I had, 6 month in, I had a very big loss one day where I lost like $15,000 in minutes. And by the end of the month, I was down 50K. So I lost in 1 month would have taken me 6 months to build. I lost the majority of it. And, I was very kind of in a shell shock situation because I hadn't really experienced any losing streaks or anything like that. And not only losing streaks, but big losses. And that was my first time really kind of coming face to face with, losing $50,000 inside of a month. Prior to that, I had not had that experience. So I was kind of close to giving up back then, but it's not really in my nature to quit or to give up easily. And if I get knocked down, I'm just the kind of person like in The Last Samurai where Tom Cruise gets knocked down and he gets back up, and knocked down and gets back up, and that's just kind of more my mentality. So that was the first time. And then the second time was actually a couple years ago when I had moved from living overseas internationally for years back to the US, and I moved back to California. So it was very hard for me to day trade in the, early times moving back, because I'd always been on East Coast, New York time, or even past that. So I had to adjust to living in the US, and I had to adjust trading completely. And for about a year, I felt like I didn't really have, a serious footing or a serious edge in the markets due to the adjustments I was making. And I was, very frustrated at that time. And so, I was considering just moving on. I had offers from people who wanted to buy my business, and I could have easily sold out my business and, retired and been done with it. But I felt like, no, I'm not going to end on a bad note. That's just not like me. So if I'm going to end, I'm going to end on a solid note. I'm going to end on a strong note so I can walk away with my head high. And
Good.
so I recommitted to like, okay, well, I have to adapt to this new environment. I have to adapt to the new time zone, being, several hours behind where I was before. And I'm just going to have to adapt to this. And so I went through this adaptation process, and it ended up being the best move I've ever had, because my trading is on fire right now, and it's on fire in a way that it hasn't been on in quite a long time. And so, yeah, I've definitely had moments, but I'm just not the person who's going to quit very easily.
Good.
And so, it's more of just I would call it my girlfriend calls me really stubborn. And so I would call it a really stubborn streak in me that just won't allow me to give up.
Well, stubborn is good. It has its advantages, and certainly trading is one of these activities where many people, 95% of people, do eventually fail. Even established traders who've got a
Yes.
name for themselves can sometimes go
Yes.
through black swan events where they just simply cannot recover. Um,
Hmm.
I myself endured a black swan event in 2015. I think it was the SMB
Yeah.
rate adjustment. They moved the cap or the peg, sorry, and I got a serious kind of hit from that, and I just had to make that back
Mm.
and keep my tail between my legs, and it was a humbling experience because it really just made you realise that okay, making money is enjoyable and everything, but you do have to respect the market for its ability to do anything at any time, no matter what. So you used to work as a broker as well, so you must have some pretty unique insights. And this is something, an advantage, dare I say, that many retail traders or people listening won't have. And they certainly won't have it when embarking on their journey. And what I would like to ask you is in what ways did it prepare you to be a better trader? Because, of course, broking and trading are very different, but certainly brokers, well, they've got a few tricks up their sleeves as well. And it can be pretty
Yes.
nuanced. So, in what ways did it better prepare you?
One of the great ways that being a broker really helped me was that at the time that I was a brokerage was still early retail FX time. So it was 2004 to 2006. And so the industry was still young and developing. And when I had gotten started, on Wall Street with FXCM, the talent and the skill level of the people that I was working with was incredibly high. I started off on the Wall Street office, but then they ended up going back to San Francisco because they wanted to start a whole new office there, and I was already from California. So the team that I was with in California, we had a professional futures trader whose dad was a professional futures trader. So we had, him as just a great experience to work with. We had a 20-year, 30-year bond trader with us. We had a couple good macro traders, and we had only one other kind of, short-term technical trader, but we had this just core group of people that already had a wealth of trading experience around us, and we all loved the markets, and we all lived and breathed the markets and trading. So to be in such kind of like a very intense environment just created this soup that we all, if we became sponges, we all grew from. And so that was a big thing. But then when you're working as a broker, you kind of are on the inside of the market to some degree, and you're seeing things on the inside. And so, I didn't just want to do my job as a broker. I wanted to learn everything I could while I was there. I hadn't taken a single business class in college, not one. You don't take business classes when you're studying neuroscience and Eastern philosophy. So I felt like, this is a tremendous opportunity for me to see the markets from the inside out. And I wanted to absorb everything, and so we did all kinds of studies and tests and back tests and had our own prop team. And, some of the studies that we did on our top traders, and, at that time that I was with them, we had over 100,000 traders, a lot of data to see what really works and what doesn't, and how people are really good at finding edges. And so, to have that opportunity and then to see, kind of be facing outward towards the retail client side instead of being the retail client, you got to really see how things work, what doesn't, what you want to avoid, and how you can find unique edges in the market. So just a tremendous learning experience, which I'm very grateful for.
Great. So that's a lot of rigorous analysis took place at the brokerage, and I understand that this is something from my experience from mentoring people from 2010 onwards that a lot
Mm.
of people can't be bothered to do, myself included. I mean, I don't have that natural propensity to want to go down and crunch a lot of data, but it is necessary long term to survive in
Sure.
the markets. And
Yes.
it is, well, to a lot of people, it is very boring, but it is a necessary evil, so to say. But one thing that's interesting as well is, contrary to certainly our style of trading at the Lazy Trader, we focus in long-term end of day and end of week traders. You're a day trader, and that is a style of trading which I never got on too well with. I know my strengths and my weaknesses, but what does
Mm.
actually appeal the most to you about that style? Surely it ties you down a little bit more in the daytime, having to watch price intraday.
For sure. Yeah. So I don't just day trade. I do day trade, but I also swing trade on a short-term, medium-term basis. I also have exposure to certain stocks and instruments that I will keep for a year, basically. Like there's certain stocks I'm in right now that I will have exposure to for the rest of the year, maybe even into 2021. So I'm not just day trading. I do, swing trading. I do some long-term position trading, and I trade options as well. So I'm kind of, involved in a lot. But to answer your question about, what appeals to me as day trading, part of it is that when you're day trading, you're looking at smaller time frames. And I look at time frames as kind of like lenses on a camera, that the higher time frames is kind of like this zoom out panoramic, approach to the landscape, which is the markets. And when you kind of zoomed out and you have this wide angle lens, there's certain things that you can see, this certain cohesive picture that's quite amazing. But you may not be able to see certain details up close. And that's kind of what smaller time frames in day trading does, is that it allows me to kind of spot more micro opportunities in the market. And sometimes these day trades and these types of moves that happen on the day trade, session, basically stocks and FX, end up being the precursors and the momentum to very large moves. So I look at it as a chance to kind of capture an edge that I can turn over really fast while exposing myself to a really kind of fast, intense feedback loop. And I know that all that data that I'm processing by looking at the charts on, smaller time frames and seeing pattern after pattern after pattern, many of the patterns I see on the 5-minute chart are the same that I would see on a 4-hour daily chart. So it's a combination of that. It's a combination of wanting to multiply my edge, because the more times I can multiply my edge, then the more times I can make money. But then it's also partially how my mind works. My mind really likes to be engaged. It likes to be challenged. And, the intensity of day trading, which I only really do 3 hours a day. It's the first 3 hours of the stock New York Open is when I'm day trading. And then after that, I'm not really day trading. I'm now shifting into swing positions and options. But it's something that just gravitates well for me in terms of my mind needs to be challenged on a very, on a daily basis. And it needs a certain kind of like speed and intensity. And that's some of the time. Sometimes I just need to take a break and I want to sit back and watch things on higher time frames. So it's more of one of those things where it's just, hey, this is what works best for me. And
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing that any trader can do, is find what's best for you. And if that's higher time frames and end of day, then by all means do it. There's no way somebody can say that there's only one way you should make money or one time frame. It's there's so many ways to do it. So many people that are doing it. Find what's best for you, and then just stick to that and hammer that as much as possible.
Absolutely, it's a very personal pursuit, trading, and this is one thing we always instructed our mentees to do. I mean, of course,
Mm-hmm.
opportunities based on a strategy on the weekly time frame or the daily time frame be fewer and further between than say on the hourly or 4 hourly time frame. So we would always say, why don't you go to the 4 hourly or the hourly time frame and just simply sharpen your pencil and get used to spotting opportunities on those
Yes.
time frames rather than waiting weeks or months.
Yes.
So the industry has changed a lot in 10 years, and the industry, I've noticed, has really become crowded with educators as well. Some
Mm-hmm.
definitely not as born as equal as others, unfortunately. But why do you think that is?
I think a couple things. There's a very low barrier to entry
Yeah,
to create a website and a story, whether it's true or not. And, so I think a combination of low barriers of entry, but there's also really very little to no regulation around trading education. There is some regulation around marketing materials and what you can and cannot say, but there's virtually no regulation in terms of, okay, you want to create a trading education website, well, you have to have these qualifications and you have to demonstrate these qualities. I think if there was regulation out there, and I don't know what it should look like, and that's a very large conversation, but I think if there was regulation out there for trading educators, I think the industry would be like the herd would be cold by like 80 to 90% overnight, because most of the people that are out there probably could not fulfill the regulatory requirements to train people. If you just made a simple requirement of, for example, okay, well, if you want to teach people how to trade, you have to demonstrate that you were profitable for at least 1 year in the last 3 years. 80 to 90% of the trading educators are now gone. That they're gone. That's it
yeah.
right there. And they'd have to verify it through like a professional accountant or, an accounting firm or something like that, or go through a regulatory body where they will look over your track record. it doesn't really matter if somebody's trading a $50,000 account or a $5 million account. If they're profitable at the end of the year, they know if they're profitable over a 1 year period, they open the account January 1st, and at the end of the year, they're profitable. They know how to trade. There's no way around that. They know how to trade.
Yeah, exactly. As long as they're risk-adjusted returns. But
Yeah, like, they're not punting, and they're not like, they didn't have like 100 losses and one win and they're profitable. Like, they show certain metrics. If you were to just create that simple regulation out there, 80 to 90% of all the trading educators are gone. And so, anytime you have an environment with low regulation and low barriers of entry, you're going to find a lot of people coming into that industry and taking advantage of that opportunity.
it's true. You're right what they say. The barriers to entry are very small. We're getting in the UK a proliferation of these self-styled Instagram gurus who are
Yes.
basically doing nothing more than hiring a Lamborghini or a Rolls Royce for the day, pretending to have this
Yes.
fake lifestyle and getting people to sign up via an affiliate link to a broker, which is generally offshored, getting them to deposit their money, which they won't have returned, and just riding off the kickbacks. And morally, it's wrong, of course, but no one's really doing anything about it. That's the tragedy, and they're masquerading to newspapers who are short of a good story, for example, and they're lapping it up as good editorial content, even though they probably know deep down that these people are fake. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I've seen that, in the UK. I've seen it in a lot of countries, and sadly, flash sells.
Yeah,
The flashy things do sell, but if you kind of think about it for a second, like, okay, so let's just say regulation's not going to happen anytime soon. Well, if people are allowed to create these flashy websites and flashy, rentals of like a Lamborghini and things like that, and all this good Instagram stuff and attract clients, well, in some sense, you kind of have to feel like caveat emptor, in the sense of, hey, if a client is willing to pay into that, then clearly they're not willing to do a whole lot of research. And that's a learning experience that they should go through. It's one thing if somebody says like, hey, invest in this fund and I will trade for you, and then they just take the money and run. That's a scam. But if it's somebody who is presenting something that's not true, hey, I'm a good trader and things like that, and somebody doesn't do their research, part of the onus is on the client to do the research. Part of the onus is on the client to ask questions and to find out, and find out, does this person have a real framework? Are there people who are trading with them that are doing well? What's their background in this? And so, there's responsibilities on both sides. I think every trading educator has a responsibility to try and avoid the flash. I get it does sales, but whenever you ever, I've been in this for 13 years. Whenever you see me like flashing cars or houses, I'm just not that kind of guy.
yeah,
If
yeah,
I ha-
exactly.
if you and I need a Lamborghini to get course sales and clients and things like that, then clearly we're in the wrong business. We should be in the image business, not in the trading business. And so,
Yeah, it's very true. But you're absolutely right. There is this enormous disconnect between ethical and conservative marketing that is congruent and representative versus the sacrifice, lower sales or fewer sales, should I say, versus the high sales yielded from flashy, ghastly, hyperbolic marketing. And that is I think that is an industry problem. And I always respect people like yourself who don't really use those kind of props in order to get sales. So you present the real
and,
picture.
and you've done the same. You've kept your profile very clean of that, and you focused more on the methodology and the skill set, and your style. And I think the industry needs more of that. And the funny thing about it is that, like, okay, let's say the person really does have the Lamborghini. Okay, well, I don't know about you, but cars are depreciating assets. And I don't like to buy stocks that are depreciating on a daily basis. That's just not my jam. I'd rather invest my money in something that is going to appreciate. Now, there are ways to use cars to, the only way it seems like it makes sense from a financial perspective to buy a car that's, really flashy and use it as a marketing tool is if the amount of income you get from that will outweigh the depreciation you pay on that over time. But, overall, it seems like I'd rather have the money and use that for things that I want to create than have a really flashy car. And I live in the mountains, almost 2,000 meters up. Like, having a Ferrari would be the dumbest thing on the planet that I could possibly do, because it's going to sit in my garage for 6 months while there's 3 or 5 feet of snow outside. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
precisely.
it just
Well, I'm glad we're
hopefully people can get focused on usually when somebody falls for the flash and then they have a bad experience, then they come to people like us and like, okay, I really want to learn. I'm done with the flash. I want to focus on someone who's going to really teach me, and they'll come to someone like you or someone like myself. So that's the industry, and that's the focus of my clients is not people who are attracted to flash, but people who are attracted to really learning the skill.
Absolutely. Expectations management is key. And for those people who are listening, want to find out more, Chris, where can they find you?
Yeah, so they can find me at secondskiesforex.com. That's our website. And then the only other place I'm really on these days is my YouTube channel, which is Second Skies Trading. So I'm on both of those prolifically. They can see me for our pre-market watch list on Tuesdays. Once a month we'll do live trading Q&A webinar on YouTube. But yeah, find me on my YouTube channel or find me on my website, and we have just years and years of free material for people to kind of see what we're about, what we're teaching, and how we teach people to make money trading.
Great. Well, the link will be below the video as well, so please do check it out. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been great talking.
It was a pleasure.